Play the hand you're dealt and stop making excuses.
You know, when people hear that, I don't want them to hear that like, hey, who cares that you had an abusive father? Stop complaining. Like, that's hard. If you had an alcoholic father who hit you, that's impossibly challenging. I'm not saying, who cares, move on with your life, you loser. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there are many people in the world who did the exercise, the therapy, the reading, the positivity in their ears, who were able to overcome adversity to live a productive life. I'm saying that if anybody in the world has ever achieved happiness and success under your circumstances, then you are capable of it. My mother lost her mother at 5.
Wow.
Well, how much more adversity do you want? And she went on to become the greatest mother of all time. You know, so I think it's incredibly important. There's not a person listening, not a person right now behind the scenes or me and you that didn't have plenty of adversity in different ways. We all have our own adversities. I'll give you an example. I now believe one of the most adverse situations to be born into is extreme wealth. Something I would have never thought of 30 years ago. That if you told me, hey, Gary, give me a scenario where you immediately are going to worry for that person's life, I would say growing up, being born to a billionaire family that's third generation wealthy. That level of potential nepotism and judgment is profound. So when somebody grows up poor in a village with no water, it's very hard for them to be empathetic to a third generation billionaire's kid. However, until you walk in someone else's shoes, you don't know. And I can tell you, some of the deeply, deeply most unhappy people I know on earth are the ones that were born with the most, because it's a very challenging upbringing.
Reminds me of a quote that says, the hard way is hard, but it's not as hard as the easy way.
Oh, I like that quote. I've not heard that often. I think now that you've said it, I might have heard it once or twice.
You took me there with your last story.
I love you for that. It's a great quote. It's true. Because everything in life has a price. It just does. And I think, I think it's really, I like that quote a lot.
Is suffering necessary for existence?
I think it's less about, is it necessary for existence? I wish that many of us could live life without suffering. I just think it is. You know, if we as humans are capable of loving, which we all are, it means suffering's part of the story. I mean, suffering is just a part of the journey. So I think I wish it wasn't a necessity. It's less of like, do I believe that somebody can live a perfect life? I mean, in theory, you'd like to think yes. But I think that's a little bit of delusion. There's nobody who will live a life, you know, especially if they're lucky and get to live a life to 80, 90, 100. Not only will you deal with suffering, you will deal with multiple variations of suffering. And so humans love. And if you love, that means suffering is part of the equation. And so, yeah, I think it's part of what we signed up for.
I mean, some of my biggest lessons in life, I grew from my first heartbreak. I grew from working under a toxic boss for 13 years.
Of course.
Before I started this, I grew from falling out with my best friend and cousin, and it made me a more resilient person.
No question. Adversity is the foundation of success.
Like that.
You know, it just is. And so as long as one can contextualize their suffering, let's use your cousin. I don't know the story. If you choose optimism, if you sit here today as a young man and say, that was horrible, I say maybe, but maybe we can say, look at how many years did you have a very good relationship with your cousin? I'm asking you, how many years?
All my life.
Give me the number.
38 years.
I view you as very lucky. I was born to a very small family. Most of my family heritage was lost in the Holocaust. I don't even have a single cousin that's my age. So I hear that, and I look at my children and their relationships with their cousins, and I hear 38 years with a cousin as best friend. I view to choose optimism. I view you as lucky that you had 38 years of that. I'm quite back to suffering. When you have 38 years of that, when you don't have that, it hurts. And there's a lot of pain that came along with that for both of you, I'm sure.
Truly.
But I view it from my seat as an opportunity for you to view it as a remarkable gift that you had at all, right? There's that saying about losing love, but never having it at all, stuff like that. That's what you had with your cousin. You had 38 years of love, experiences, positive memories. Currently, the taste is not as good. But as you get older, my friend, only one thing will happen. The negativity will subside and the fondness of those first 38 years will grow, which is why so many people that love each other reconcile. The likelihood of you and your cousin you haven't reconciled yet. The likelihood of the two of you reconciling after 38 years of good is very high. It may take 4, 7, 12 years, and it may never happen. Sometimes people are too stubborn. Sometimes humility on both sides is lacking. But there's times where truly, if God was looking down, one person was 100% wrong. It's rare, but it happens once in a blue moon. And usually that's the reason there is no reconciliation. But anytime anyone has a problem with somebody, in that scenario, they're a contributor. Let me be very vulnerable. I have feelings towards people I resent. It was only into my mid-40s that I realized I was a contributor. My lack of candor in not telling people that I loved what was bothering me was the enabler for them to do more of it. Is that their fault, or was I a contributor to it? This has been one of the things I've been thinking a lot about. For some reason, we've weaponized the word hustle as a negative to mental health. In my world, there's no correlation. First of all, let's break down the word hustle. Instead of weaponizing the word hustle, like many people on the extreme side of delusion, I view the word hustle as the word hard work. As a matter of fact, maybe something you know and others here know is I've stopped using hustle and now I just use hard work. To me, it's always meant the same thing. So I believe in hard work. I really have no idea how you achieve anything without it. Not in the gym, not in self-esteem, not in complacency, not in mental health, and definitely not in business. So for me, hard work does not have any contribution to burnout or mental health issues. Why people burn out and have health issues is because they're not self-aware and because they're insecure. If you're working 14 hours a day, taking drugs, doing the wrong things, all to achieve $1 million to impress others, you will 100% of the time burn out. When you work 15 hours a day because you like it more than any other thing you could be doing those 15 hours, more than playing football, more than cooking, more than watching a movie, more than listening to Drake and Kendrick Lamar, more than anything in the world that you would rather do is work than anything else, the only thing you're guaranteeing yourself is good mental health. I think the world has this wrong. I think the word hard work has been demonized by people that don't want to put in hard work. And I believe that there are unlimited people out there who hustle, who are incredibly happy. And I personally know hundreds, if not thousands of people who are incredibly balanced in their 35 hours of work a week, who are deeply insecure, have major mental health issues. There's no correlation of the two. And I loved how you responded because we've brought them together and we have it completely confused. Talk about something that I talk a lot about that the kids don't like. People, when I say patience, one of the most fascinating things that has happened in my life's journey is realizing people will take words and give them definitions that are not of that word. Mo, do you know that most young people that DM me, that push against me for patience, describe it not as patience? When they hear me talk about patience, they think I'm saying indecisiveness, non-action, or worst of all, most people misinterpret patience for complacency. The last thing I am is complacent. The last thing I am is indifferent or impatient. I think that patience is incredibly important. Insecurity is predicated on needing validation from others. No wonder so many guys are impatient to make $1 million because they want to buy a BMW and a Rolex to impress the opposite sex and their friends. When you are actually secure and self-confident, you can lean on patience to be your friend. When you lean on patience to be your friend, you achieve much greater success. Shortcuts and missteps have direct correlation to mitigating and limiting your upside. The more patience you have to pill it out, the more likely you will succeed. Most people's impatience comes from one source: insecurity. I've got to get famous now. I've got to make $1 million now. Why? They need that asset for everybody else.